welcome to Bharata First. You're watching Big Picture. I'm frankrausanpereira. Well, the movie Kashmir Files has put the spotlight on what happened in Kashmir in 1990.
आपने कितने लोगों की जाने ली? यानी आपने इतने सारे लोग मार डाले कि आपको ये भी नहीं याद कि आपने कितने लोग मार डाले?
10-12 हमारे होंगे।
10-12 की 20?
अब 20 ही है। एक हाथ में कुरान और दूसरे हाथ में असलहा।
In this edition of Big Picture, we will look at what the situation was like 3 decades ago in Kashmir, what has changed, if anything, over the last 30 years, and what's the best way forward. Joining me on the program today are Mr. SP Vaid, former DGP of Jammu and Kashmir, Major General Ashwani Siwach, retired defense expert, and Ashish Dhar, co-founder Upword Foundation and a Kashmiri Hindu living in exile. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of Big Picture. Mr. Vaid, let me start with you first. You know, when it happened, you were there in Kashmir, you were an SP as well at that point in time, and you witnessed everything that happened firsthand in 1990. I think the highest number of attempts to take your life were made in that particular year. And firstly, we salute you for your bravery and for everything that you have done. And we are so very proud of you. Thank you so very much, sir, for everything that you've done for our nation.
Thank you.
Mr. Vaid, what was the situation like? And none better than you to explain to us because you witnessed it all firsthand.
See, Frank, actually, all this started around 87, 88. The small incidents started happening. And the terrorism, which the plan of the ISI, which we all didn't know. And let me confess, not only J&K police, even our central agencies did not know for quite some time the plan hatched by our neighboring country. And small incidents like firing on the police headquarters, a blast in Lal Chowk, attack on the then DIG Kashmir, Mr. Batali's residence, in which one terrorist was killed. Incidents like this started happening. And meanwhile, I would say it was sheer chance, but J&K police of that time of district Kupwara came across some people and they were in fact, the then CID department of J&K police, the intelligence department, what you call in other states, we had a counterintelligence wing of the CID. These two units of the J&K police got hold of some boys in Kupwara district who had gone across, had some people coming from across, had holding meeting in area of Kupwara district. They were trained, radicalized, armed, and sent here. And this was first batch of about 70 odd people who were taken across. And from their interrogation, we were shocked. Till then, we did not know what Kalashnikov is. Actually, the J&K police was equipped only with 303 rifles. We did not know what is Kalashnikov. And we sought the help of the army that time. What is this rifle? That was the, you can imagine, shock for J&K police. And the whole plan was revealed by these boys that Pakistan has a, under Ziaul Haq, the ISI had hatched this plan of Operation Topak, how they were holding meeting and planning how to take boys across from Kashmir, train them, arm them, radicalize them, and send them back to revolt against the state government and the government of India at that time and create a ruckus which we all witnessed from 89, 90 onwards. And this all was shared with the state government, and I'm sure the state government of Dr. Farooq Abdullah must have shared, because it is question of national security, must have shared with the then government, union government. But unfortunately, I don't know the compulsions of political leaders of that time. Why did government of India approve such a move? Some of them were released, and a majority of them were released on 15th August, between July and November, December. In the meanwhile, incidents of violence against Kashmiri Pandits started happening. And the director Doordarshan was hit. Like him, prominent Kashmiri Pandits became targets, like Mr. Kheda, General Manager HMT, the Registrar Kashmiri University, many other like him, the famous judge who awarded death penalty to Maqbool Bhatt. Now, this had created scare in the Kashmiri Pandit community, and incidents of violence started happening. And slowly, processions started coming out. The overall atmosphere was so surcharged. There were slogans on all the roads. Kashmir, Indian dogs go back. Kashmiri Pandits were targeted in different parts of the valley, and there were announcements from the mics of the mass. You have all seen that in the picture, and I don't think anything is wrong. They have actually, on the basis of interviews of 700 Kashmiri victims, Kashmiri Pandit victims, they have shown, and absolutely, and I witnessed all that happening in Kashmir Valley at that time. There was so much of sway of the local population that many of them thought that Azadi is around the corner. In fact, some of them even had Pakistan timing on their watches. And all wings of the civil society, all wings of the government got affected. Let me admit here, even my police got affected, the administration got affected, the educational institutions, the hospitals were den of terrorists. You could not call, doctors would not come to district SP's residence, fearing that he will be targeted. Many Muslims were also targeted. Let me make it very clear. Many of them, whoever stood for India, whoever sided with the security forces, whoever criticized terrorists, many of them were suspected as informers. They were all targeted, but they were targeted for different reasons. Kashmiri Pandits were targeted for their religion under a planned move of the ISI to do the ethnic cleansing from Kashmir and make it an Islamic Republic of Kashmir. That was a proper conspiracy. And meanwhile, Dr. Farooq Abdullah's, before he resigned, in the December 89, you must be knowing about Rubiya Sayyed's kidnapping. Her father, Union Home Minister, was Mufti Muhammad Sayyed. Now she was kidnapped in Srinagar city, and in exchange to her release, 5 hardcore terrorists were released. Now that time, this atmosphere was so surcharged, incidents were happening, the frenzy all across the valley, in sense of insecurity in the minorities, and all this started happening. You are releasing terrorists on one side, 70 odd, and then this incident happened, and a feeling went that mighty government of India has been brought down to its knees by a handful of youth holding guns. Now, you can imagine the impact on the morale of the terrorists. They thought they have conquered the whole India, and the morale of the police was nosedived. Security forces, that time we didn't have army and paramilitary in that strength what you see today. In fact, after governor's rule, I'll come to first. Dr. Farooq Abdullah's government resigned on 18th of January 1990, and then Mr. Jagmohan was appointed as governor for the second time. He joined in Jammu on 19th and then came to Srinagar on 20th, and it took him some time to take control because things had deteriorated to such extent. So there was no government worth its name for few days. And obviously the Kashmiri Pandit community in this surcharged atmosphere with getting targeted felt very, very insecure, and they ran away. After all, everyone would like to save his life. There is some narrative floated in Kashmir that Mr. Jagmohan was responsible for running away from Kashmir Valley of the Kashmiri Pandits. But I don't remember any of the directive of the Honorable Governor or any direction to us to that count. Nothing like this happened, at least not to my knowledge. And I don't think he was a very able administrator. But the atmosphere was such, and it was under a conspiracy that the ethnic cleansing of Kashmiri Pandits was done.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vaid, for sharing the exact picture of what happened then, because you experienced it firsthand. Thank you for being so frank and open about it. General, let me come to you now. Like Mr. Vaid has just pointed out, it was not a very easy time for the army as well, because there were so many things that were still not in place. We are also dealing with an enemy which was very well trained, which had a lot of local support as well. So that would have been a big problem and a big challenge for the army too.
Absolutely. See, Frank, first of all, what DG has told, I fully endorse whatever he said. But you have to see another two issues which were also happened that time. First of all, in basically Punjab, the Khalistan movement had been totally, taken under control. Now that was motivated Pakistan ISI that in Punjab, where they were Sikhs only and not Muslim, they could almost take Punjab. That was a feeling that the type of militancy they created in Punjab, kind courtesy, then Indian security forces, we could bring back that situation back to normalcy in Punjab. And it was also due to the people of Punjab and also the security forces, mainly Punjab police. So this has given them an idea, if we could do it in Punjab, why can't it be done in Kashmir? So that was also one idea which was mooted by ISI. The second is the situation which was there in Afghanistan border. That is the time when, Afghanistan, the Russians have gone back, they were almost defeated. And these Mujahideen which were there, they were almost about 10,000, 15,000, which were trained by ISI and the CIA, were also available. And they were equipped with a modern weapon. So in Operation Tobacco, they were also diverted from Afghanistan border toward Jammu and Kashmir. So now these two things also happened. And this, in addition, what DG was telling that, the situation started deteriorating, and possibly as a nation we failed, we did not pick up those telltale signs. Certainly, as far as the army is concerned, the army was not deployed for basically internal security at that point of time. They were only on line of control, and line of control was also not to that extent as strong and robust as on today. So there were gaps, and that is how they could go from India to POK, get trained, and then come back. So therefore, as far as internal security was concerned, it was like any routine state. Police was doing it, and therefore there was a lot of gap, and the paramilitary was also very limited. So the situation was ripe for such an eventuality to take place. And the way, the situation deteriorated, it deteriorated so very fast that one was surprised that how things are now going from bad to worse, that are we really going to lose Jammu and Kashmir? A situation came to that extent. But certainly, thereafter, once Jagmohan has come into forefront, he has taken over the governor of Jammu and Kashmir. That Armed Forces Special Power Act. Now, the Armed Forces Special Power Act was not started from Jammu and Kashmir. It initially started in Assam, and General Sinha was there, and he is the architect of Armed Forces Special Power Act. He saw it; it is a very successful model. So this Armed Forces Special Power Act was also invoked in Kashmir and Jammu and Kashmir. And thereafter, the history tells very clearly. Of course, unfortunately, the Kashmiri Pandit, that was exodus and genocide. We must accept it. As a nation, we failed, and they had no choice but to leave it. But thereafter, once the things were gone, the security forces understood what the DG was telling, that the police got activated, police intelligence, CID started working. There was more coordination between security forces of all, especially army, police, and the paramilitary also came. And then the whole Jammu and Kashmir was divided into grids. And that is the time when the grid system also came. And then we raised basically two security forces which can fight against such an environment. These were the Rashtra Rifles were also raised just after 2-3 years. So therefore, the whole situation which built up, and Rashtra Rifles also, the idea was not started from Jammu and Kashmir. It started initially from Punjab. There were initially certain Rashtra Rifle units raised for Jammu and for Punjab. The matter got resolved there, but then they shifted to Jammu and Kashmir. And then, the best thing which could happen in Jammu and Kashmir to bring the situation under control, the Rashtra Rifle along with Punjab police has played a honest role. So both, once this Rashtra Rifle came, then they were the complete Jammu and Kashmir, North and South Kashmir were divided into grid, and then start operating against the terrorists. Now the threat was twofold. One was the terrorists which were coming from from Pakistan. They were Mujahideens which were already trained, which were foreign terrorists, and also those boys which have gone, misguided youth which have gone toward POK, got trained and come back, and they were acting more like a guide. So the action was brutal because all these Mujahideen which were well trained, well motivated, and hardened criminals of Afghanistan, they brought a lot of brutality in Kashmir Valley. In the initial stage, everyone was shocked and surprised, but slowly and steadily, the thing came under control. It is also known the initial stage of 90s and 89, the infiltration was of a very high margin, say about 40, 50 coming together. Thereafter, of course, as the situation improved, it improved in twofold. One is we made a robust line of control, ensuring that the infiltration does not take place. Now, and second thing is, if a terrorist manages to infiltrate, which is not possible that you will have a zero infiltration, that we had a grid system where the complete security forces, whether it is Rashtra Rifle or paramilitary or Punjab police, they acted in unison, and then the situation started improving. The way the situation deteriorated in 90s, it also improved quite well up to 95, 96. Then again, it took a dip in 99 when this Kargil took place, and thereafter again the situation brought under control. Now the issue is after the Kashmiri Pandit has gone from there, which is unfortunate, which was a genocide. Security forces have taken grid, and then you start operating against the terrorists. And mainly these terrorist action which were taken, things start normalizing it. Modernization of Punjab police take place. Even the paramilitary which was inducted in Jammu and Kashmir were given a modern weapon, and the Rashtra Rifle from the beginning only were given a far better weapon than which we were even having on line of control. So overall, situation improved also considerably. But as a nation, did we really sort of consolidate that? that is still a question mark, but that we'll discuss further, Frank.
Absolutely. Ashish, let me bring you into the picture now. You know, your community has suffered the most and suffered beyond words really can describe. And at least something that the film does is try to bring some semblance of what might have happened then. And even the film conveys what happened to one family. There were thousands, lakhs of families that were affected as a result of this. What is the kind of impact that those 5 years, you know, between 87 and 92, have had on the entire Hindu community in Kashmir? That is something that I want to understand from you.
Well, the answer, Frank, is pretty simple in that those 5 years and the so-called exodus, the forced exodus of hundreds of thousands of Kashmiri Hindus from our native land of thousands of years, has actually pushed us to the brink of extinction. And we are facing the cultural extinction, our cultural extinction every day. Our culture, our language, our way of living, our shrines, everything is gone, and we have no way to recover that, at least in the near future. So, what the film does, I think, it plays a very important part in conveying what really happened, because art as a form is much more effective than, and cinema in particular is much more effective than any kind of intellectual engagement with the public, because intellectual discussions and books and articles, they only reach a certain, a very small section of the population. But what this movie has done is phenomenal. And while I had some minor quibbles, if this was another movie, I would have maybe thought about it differently and looked at it more cinematically. But I think that, the USP of the movie and what it has accomplished is that it has told the brutal truth. Of course, the truth is more brutal than it can be shown on the screen, but hats off to the filmmakers for doing what they've done. So in that sense, I mean, for our community, this movie is big deal, because this is the first time someone has had the courage to actually depict what we went through in an honest manner. And if you permit, I just want to add a few points to what is already.
Please go ahead.
So one of the most important messages that the film delivers is the complicity of the local population in whatever transpired. And for the last 30 years, there has been a consistent campaign to somehow shift the blame of the tragedy of the early 90s in Kashmir to Pakistan or to foreign actors, and to some small band of terrorists or dacoits, something like that. But it is a well-documented fact that it was the entire valley, the majority population, the Muslims of Kashmir, who were complicit in that. And I'll just give you very small examples. In 1986 itself, there was a mini exodus of Kashmiri Pandits from the district of Anantnag. And a lot of our people had to move from Anantnag to Srinagar or to outside the valley. Even if you go before that, even in 1947, a lot of Kashmiri Pandits had to leave Kashmir after the Pakistani militia attacked, and there was also great celebration of this militia attack in the local population back then also. But then it turned out that these guys were so barbaric that even the local Muslims were ended up being victims. So then there was a reversal of public opinion even back then. A small anecdote that I can share: in around 86, 87, much before the so-called terrorism had peaked, in 86, 87, our house was under renovation, and there was a local mystery employed, and he was working on the bathroom floor, and we were putting some marbles. So there was some problem with the alignment, and my aunt complained to him saying that there's problem with the alignment and water is getting accumulated here. So he said, he very casually said, why are you worried about this? Because you anyway have to hand it all over to us in a few years. And my aunt thought that this guy is out of his mind. But but it turned out just in a couple of years, it turned out to be correct prediction. So this was well known amongst the majority community. Even the most common man, right, like someone who's a plumber, knew that this is going to happen, and the Hindus were completely in dark. And so was the state administration. So this was a long hatched plan. This was not something that happened overnight. This was a long hatched plan. They worked at it for years, perhaps decades. And finally it happened when the circumstances were right. So that's how that's how it actually transpired.
Thank you so much, Ashish, for sharing that with us. And let me also say that we are with you. We are in this together. At the end of the day, we are working towards building a stronger nation, and we'll do everything that we possibly can to get that done. Thankfully, things are changing, but not as fast as we would like to see that happening. But we hope that sooner rather than later, we'll see the tide change in India's favor. Thank you so much for sharing, Ashish. Mr. Vaid, coming back to you now. So what changed post that, in fact, and why is it we are where we are today? Because if you look at what things were 30 years ago and compare it to what is happening right now, we would say that things are much better. What transpired in between? If you can narrate some of the key turning points.
Okay, but just before that, what Ashish said, I tend to agree with him broadly, that there was a complicity of the local, because this had happened before the involvement of Pakistan's Operation Topak. In '86, the communal riots happened in Anantnag, and even prior to independence in 1930s, the Kashmiri Pandits were actually targeted, and they were forced to leave Kashmir Valley. And much before that also, I think it is 6th or 7th time it had happened. Barring exceptions, there are good individuals also. You can't blame the whole community. Some of the neighbors did, even in 90s, I saw, did try to persuade that, no, we are here, don't worry. But overall, as a civic society, there was a failure of the majority community. That I just wanted to clarify that point. And I think the Pakistan, ever since 47, after having facing defeat in 47, Qawwalis, and 65 and 71, was working on this. And I think the Jamaat-e-Islami and the madrasas were mushrooming of madrasas all across, and Jamaat-e-Islami was used to radicalize Kashmiri population, which was prior to independence was largely very tolerant. But I think their plan worked. The difference between Pakistan and India has been, Pakistan had a consistent policy on Kashmir, which was not true of India. India, as late as even few years, in fact, I used to wonder, it is a proxy war launched on your country, and how can you leave it only to state government? How can not government of India take things? Now, the major point I would say, what has changed today, it is government of India dealing with the proxy war, and that was required much earlier. In fact, in the 90s, I used to see, how can you leave such a serious situation like this to only the state government? I recall, before I cover other points, what has changed. I recall interrogating a Lashkar-e-Toiba Pakistani terrorist in the 1990s, when I did not know what Ghazwa-e-Hind. I didn't know. And I was shocked when he told me, sir, where are you? We have already taken Kashmir, and our eyes are on central India. I was taken aback. This is their plan. It is basically part of Ghazwa-e-Hind. Now, what has changed is today The security grid is much more robust. J&K police is not J&K police of 1990s. After the 94, the Special Task Force STF was constituted, which a narrative in Kashmir is created against the J&K police and STF, and many people won elections on some of the political parties won election on bashing of STF. But let me mention here, these boys at the altar of their duty, at sacrificing their life, worked hand in hand with the security forces and army, Indian army, which were inducted in a big way after 1990 when Governor Jagmohan took over, and slowly things were brought under control, and we were finally able to, after the demise of JKL, which did not suit Pakistan's interest, it actually propped up Hizbul Mujahideen as the biggest organization in Kashmir, which was armed wing of Jamaat-e-Islami. And then we, as security forces, Indian Army, police, STF, had to use surrendered terrorists to counter these Hizbul Mujahideen, which was actually brought down in a big way. And overall situation started improving 95, 96, and we were able to conduct first time parliament election in 95 and 97, the assembly election, and that political government came. But again, 99, when Kargil happened, after Bajpayee, the then Honorable Prime Minister, who visited and he was backstabbed by Pakistan, General Musharraf, Kargil happened. Indian Army was pulled out of border areas, sent to Kargil. Lot of gaps happened, and lot of infiltration happened from the LOC of Kashmir. As a result, lot of foreign, as General was mentioning, lot of foreign terrorists were inducted. And that is the time when the predominant terrorist organization became Lashkar and Jaish, and they were primarily constituted of foreign terrorists. And the phenomena of Fidai attack happened. Those suicidal attacks started happening, parliament attack, assembly attack, so many attacks. In fact, one of the attack, I was victim. My colleague, DIG BSF, was killed in Bandipur. My another colleague, brigadier and a colonel, were blown up in a mine in the Kubara district, Baramulla district. So all this was happening. But then what changed? See, then India came up under Prime Minister Vajpayee with a plan that we will fence this LOC and IB sector bordering Pakistan in Kashmir. Like in Punjab, in a big way, this was undertaken. That time, the number of operating terrorists was 2,000, 2,500. Today, the numbers have come down to 10%, 200, 250. This was the turning point. And we had a fair election in which Mufti Sayyid and Congress government came up in 2002. Then all the terrorist incidents started coming down to 2008, till 2008. But again, Pakistan always comes up with new. Then there was a Amarnath land row, then street violence in 2008, 9, 10. And we had a lot of law and order problems in Kashmir Valley. Then post that, Burhan Wani, then I had to face that post Burhan Wani situation in Kashmir, again, very, very serious. So just in a brief saying, things today, there is no 370, there's no 35A. The central government is directly handling. Army has tightened the LOC and the international border along with the BSF. Today, that infiltration is not that easy. Pakistan is a rogue state. It is using all kinds of tactics, drone, tunneling, everything, whatever it can do. But things have changed. But my worry is the youth of Kashmir is still joining terrorism. So Pakistan is still succeeding in brainwashing them against India. So somebody, radicalization is a worldwide phenomenon. Fine, I agree. But then somebody needs to engage these boys. Some lot of work needs to be done on this so that these boys don't turn. Now, with abrogation of Article 35 and 370, a lot of investment is coming. A lot of development projects are taking place. Lot of activities taking place. This will change Kashmir. Now, time will tell in the coming days. But my worry is we must handle these young boys who should not join. Our weakness is taken advantage by Pakistan. So these things have actually changed on ground. I think today, I look back, today's Kashmir is not 1990s Kashmir.
Absolutely. General, since we are here, let's talk about, we've spoken about what has changed, but the threat from Pakistan, the threats that Mr. Vaid has just raised are real. How do we be better prepared for the future? Because these threats are not going to go away anytime soon. What should our strategy be?
Frank, two-pronged strategy. One is on line of control and international border, as brought by DG, that the LC fans, commonly known as LC fans, which came in 2004-5, and that has made a difference that infiltration has become difficult. But over a period of time, we have made our line of control very robust and very effective against any infiltration. It is multi-tier, and to get into India from POK is very difficult. I commanded a Machar Brigade from 2006 to 2008, which DG knows is very well. It used to be known as India Gate because maximum infiltration time used to be made from there, and we ensured that we have a multi-tier there, and infiltration was to the minimum. So maximum terrorists were killed before they could come into a hinterland. And the second thing which happened was that a counter-terrorism grid which was there by Rashtra Rifle, by Jammu and Kashmir Police, and by the paramilitary, it worked in unison. So that also has made a difference. Third thing which is important is the intelligence sharing. Till the intelligence is not shared horizontally and vertically simultaneously, then you do not get a real-time information. And that has changed quite a bit now. There is no one-upship in Kashmir Valley. Everyone is working in unison. That has changed considerably, especially in the last 4 or 5 years. And that's why the real-time information is coming. And you're finding that the remnants terrorists, which are about 200 to 250, they are on their run. Now, as far as the situation in Kashmir Valley is concerned, it has changed for better. 3, 4 things. You see, first of all, no doubt about it, end of the day, if a chap is unemployed, he's vulnerable and he can be radicalized easily. And that's what was happening in South Kashmir. And it is still happening. Radicalization has reduced, but it has not been eliminated. But certainly once the development start taking place, people start getting job, then you find that the things are under control. Madrasas are to be under control. Madrasas can't be allowed to make their own syllabus. That has to be monitored. Mosque also has to be, monitored. They can't be allowed to speak whatever they want. And as on today, what we can see in Kashmir Valley, that after the election which has taken place, District Development Council, Panchayat election, the complete environment has changed. It is a grassroots level democracy. Whatever gain we have done, we have to recapitulate and move forward. We can't allow whatever we have gained to come back again. So the one is that the democracy at grassroots level has come. The employment opportunities have increased. The tourism is at the record time this year. And also that, other corporate industry or cottage industry, horticulture is also doing well. We have to listen. Now you remember Saudi Arabia, UAE, they are thinking of investing in Kashmir Valley almost about $4 to $5 billion. So if the investment comes from outside and employment opportunity are there, and you find institution like medical college and also engineering college coming up, then you find the mindset of the people also changing slowly but steadily. Radicalization, I still feel, is a cause of concern. We have to take control of that, but it will change if you bring development and you don't allow any terrorist or terrorism to flow from Pakistan to India. And once you isolate that, then things change. You see, the Pakistan today know that in case if they try to make an attempt also, we will make them pay. And the mindset which has changed place after surgical strike and also Balakot has also emboldened the security forces in Kashmir Valley. That we don't have to worry, we don't have to look back. That's the thing. I still remember in 2007, that time after 2003, there was a ceasefire on the line of control. But as far as Pakistan is concerned, they were still sending a lot of infiltration. And at time when we had information about the launch pad of the terrorists across the line of control, and they were not worried, they knew it, we will not cross the line of control. We could easily go and hit, but we were not allowed. We may have done some operation unofficially, but that's what I want to share. But that thought process changed. If you have intelligence and if you can do it, do it. That's it. So there is a complete freedom of action. Mindset has changed. You are offensive in nature. And today the complete environment in Jammu and Kashmir is very positive. We must encash on that and we should not look back. We should try to take it. Now the question comes is that the society in Jammu and Kashmir Valley is not complete till Kashmiri Pandits come back. Now, how do the Kashmiri Pandits come back? What should be the format? What are the options available? That is a very important question. I'm sure the government of India is trying to do it. A loose sort of thing. Can they go back to their own places where they got migrated? That has its own problem. They were in, as it is, in 2-3 houses in each village. So they are vulnerable. Can then sort of a colony can be made and then can be protected, they can function. That is another, format and model. So all other models have to be worked out. At the same time, the mindset of the people of majority community has to also change. My point is certain things we can't discuss openly, but we know it. So I'm sure Ashish will be able to tell us. So the point is, if we want Kashmiri Pandit to go back, we have to create an environment in which they can go back. You can't tell them you go back. How can you go back if your life is threatened? So that sort of thing. If that situation come or not come, or do we need to do more? And if we have to send them back, what is the formula? What is the format? How will they? You see, the DG has stayed there almost about 40 years. And I have been in Kashmir Valley and complete Jammu Kashmir for about 20 years. So one understands that easy said than done. So overall, a very encouraging environment which is now existing in Jammu and Kashmir, and especially in Kashmir Valley. There is a development and progress taking place. Radicalization is still taking, but certainly less. NIA has been very effective in getting intelligence. You see that the money which used to come as Hawala money has been completely choked. Hurriyat conference is a history. They are behind the bar. Especially, the stone pelting is almost gone out of Kashmir Valley. What we need is take on from here, create an environment which is conducive for the Kashmiri Pandit to also come back. How do they come back? What is the model that government of India, along with the government of Jammu and Kashmir, has to work out? Frank.
Absolutely. Ashish, since we're here, let's take up this issue as well now. First and foremost, under the prevailing circumstances, under what is being offered by the Indian government, are the Kashmiri Pandits ready to go back to their native homes of Kashmir? That is number one. Number two, under what conditions can this actually be acceptable and can it happen? Thirdly, that fear because of what has happened, because of the kind of atrocities that have been committed against an entire community, are always going to be there. So how are you going to get over that? And bottom line, at the end of the day, is do you even want to go back to that? Because memories are always going to come back.
So, Frank, allow me to set the context before I come to the specific question. And, I was hearing what uh, what Mr. Vaid and General Saab had to say about Kashmir, and I think that there were some very insightful comments made about the internal security, how we've beefed up security across the border, what kind of measures have been taken by the police, by the army, and this is all very educative for me. However, I differ very strongly when it comes to their views on society, especially General Sabji when he was talking about Kashmiri society. And I would just like to clarify that, as a native of Kashmir, we have a civilizational memory of this conflict. It's not just my lifetime; it's part of our culture, it's part of our folklore. That for 700 years we've been under Islamic tyranny. So one of the things that is often brought up is that if there is more development, if there are jobs, if there is employment, there will be less radicalization. I think that is completely that defies facts because as we've seen from 47, like Mr. Vaid said, that earlier Kashmiri society under Dogra rule was not very radical, right? They were kind of, we could coexist. But after 1947, as they were empowered, as more education was given, as more wealth flowed into the valley, there were movies being made. I mean, literally, Kashmir Valley was the hub of Bollywood movies. Everything was shot there in the 60s and 70s. So as money started flowing, you also saw a rise in radicalization. Of course, there were other actors involved, but there is a trend generally. There's a trend that when an intolerant community gains access to more power and wealth, the intolerance increases, and that's what happened in Kashmir as well. In the 70s and the late 60s, when my parents were, they were on the brink of starting their careers, they went to the medical college. They were denied admission to the medical college despite being in the top 10 of the state, right? And they had to file a writ petition just to get their rightful seat in the medical college, and they had to waste 1 year of their academic life just because they were Hindus. So this went back all the way. Now, global Islamic terrorism as such is a reaction to modernity. And there is a great author, Roberto Calasso, who's written about it in his book called The Unnameable Present, where he describes this phenomenon as Islam's clash with modernity. And what we often hear the Indian intelligentsia speaking about is bring in more modernity so that you cure that. That is not going to happen. That is counterintuitive. That is not going to happen. So if you look at the Amarnath agitation, for example, there were no external actors involved. This is just 15 years back. There were no external actors involved, and all we said was that we needed some resting place for the pilgrims, and there was so much violence. It just erupted because there was just that thing about some Hindus staying there for more than the required time. Similarly, when I was growing up as a child, I remember that we could not even put tilak on our foreheads. And if we went to a temple, before leaving the premise of the temple, we had to remove all those sacred marks. Because there was it's not like there were Afghanis, there were these outsiders who were waiting with Kalashnikovs. It was just the fact that you would get harassed right outside the temple if they saw that you were a Hindu. So what I am urging you, especially, and people in the media, and those who are more, those with a nationalistic bent, I think rather than providing solutions, right, the duty of the intelligentsia is to state the problem correctly and keep repeating the truth so that that truth settles in the consciousness of the people. And when you state the truth correctly, then the solutions begin to emerge. So here the truth is that the majority community will not allow, there is no possibility of peaceful coexistence of Hindus with Muslims in the valley. They are not going to allow it. So let me just be very, very candid and frank about it. What are the solutions? That comes later. So in our view, in the view of the Kashmiri Pandit community, we have always from the beginning of after our post exodus, from 1991 till now, we have made a demand for a separate homeland. where earlier there was 370 also, but now there is no 370. Regardless of that, where there is a free flow of Indian Constitution, where we are willing to, where we can live peacefully and and the territory is controlled directly by the central government. We never know when the politics will force the politicians to conduct elections and hand it back over to the locals, and this is going to go back to the same situation again. So we need a centrally controlled administrative territory. And then we've also demanded at Upword Foundation, we've demanded the resettlement of Kashmiri Hindus Act in the Valley, where there are a list of 10 points which can be debated and further refined. But basically, it's about ensuring that when you create that separate union territory, obviously there will be people of the Muslim community also there. So how do we prevent that radicalized group from again oppressing the Hindus? And these are not just Kashmiri Hindus who can, anyone, whether it is Hindu, Christian, anyone can go back, as long as anyone can go to Kashmir and settle, because that's an part of India. But how do you ensure the security of people who swear by India, people who believe that they are Indians? For that, we have a list of 10 points, something like, on the lines of let's say the SC/ST Act, where you ensure that there is, make the denial of atrocities against Kashmiri Hindus a punishable offense. First of all, you need to acknowledge that there was a genocide. If someone denies that and indulges in negationism, then there should be a law which punishes that. I mean, how can you create that kind of disinformation? Like there is a law in Germany for the Holocaust, right? Similarly, setting up courts and a special ministry for rehabilitation, granting compensation for the loss of life and property, so on and so forth. I don't want to take more time. But what I'm saying is that if the solutions are premised on nothing but the truth, then they are likely to work in the long run. Otherwise, we'll keep obfuscating the issue and say that, give them jobs, give them more money, give them, pamper them, treat them specially. Nothing of that kind is going to work.
All right, gentlemen, we've had a great discussion on this very important and a very hotly debated subject over the last 1 month or so. Thank you so very much for joining me on the big picture and sharing your views and putting things in perspective for us. Thank you.